right, guys, we have a quorum. We're all here. We can call the meeting to order, actually, almost on time. Jerry, we have one member of the public. Jerry, do you know everybody on the board, or do we need to introduce ourselves to you?
I think we're okay.
Does everybody know Jerry Dyke?
Jerry Dyke from Wyndham.
From Wyndham?
We know Jerry.
A glutton for punishment of meetings?
And Barbara Martian is still here, so she's a
I'm
member
still
of the
here, but
public
I'm
too.
trying to go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were
We'll
working.
hold you up, go ahead.
All right. Does anybody have any revisions or corrections to the agenda for this evening?
We don't need any good.
These are ready if anybody wants to.
Okay.
Had them for a while.
Okay, we will have a very brief executive session for a point of information regarding personnel.
All right. So noted. Does anyone have any correspondence? I have none, but anyone? All right. No one's written.
No, I
to
haven't
us.
heard, but, well,
Okay, great. Administrative reports. I know we, Dorinne, you didn't email us one.
All I emailed this time was the letter that was sent to the Vermont Senate,
Right.
as well as the handout that is the template for all of the boards. So there's some more copies that are here if anyone would like one.
Right.
Since you have them.
Actually, I'll take one too. I didn't print that one
color.
because of the
One's
color.
Pretty.
So the ones on the top were the mistakes because they weren't double-sided. So if you just take it, yeah, no, it's just not as pretty as the one that's double-sided, so, the one that Patty has.
Same as we just saved.
Yeah, I know I didn't print that out, so.
So, and I mean, there's so much that I could tell you about great things happening at our school, but I've been writing a lot about what you guys are reading, so that's why I don't have another principal's report.
No, that's fine, thanks.
But if you have questions about how things are going, feel free.
No, I think we're all right. I know, Stephen, you've been foregoing written reports as well.
I am totally out of writing reports. I am just frankly overwhelmed with the engagement, level of engagement by the boards throughout the SU at this point. And Bud and I are really paddling hard to keep up with all the things we gotta get done. So I regret we don't have a written report. Probably, I look forward to the future.
Fine.
Joe, just a point of clarification, do you want me to talk about the letter that was sent to the legislature?
I know, I read it. If anyone has, did anybody have any questions about the letter that Dorinne wrote to the legislature? Did everyone read the letter?
Yeah,
It was
I did.
great.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Terrific. It was very powerful.
Wonderful.
You're, can I ask?
Sure.
You're holding another meeting was it tomorrow night in Newbrook?
Yes, at Newbrook.
So there'll be a different, sort of
Right,
adjusted,
right.
but it's a similar,
The only thing that will change is that this corner, it lists the colleges
Right.
that Brookline and Newfane students have been accepted to.
other than that, it's the same.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
This is Wyndham's, and there'll probably be another one on Jamaica on the 15th.
Yeah, yeah. But don't start comparing which colleges did my town get into.
No, that's
No.
right. We shouldn't do that. Let's change year to year.
Yeah, that should really,
well-
it should list all the colleges that all the Leland and Gray students got into, just because, you
They
know,
are all one
we're all one school, and regardless of what school a child chooses to apply to, based on where they live, doesn't really matter.
That was requested of me
Okay.
to distinguish it that way.
Okay.
But I don't at all mind making another page that lists definitively all the different colleges.
Can I echo back a little bit, if you don't mind?
No, please.
I think it's really important we are one unit, and I think it's really important that, you know,
Right.
all of our kids are in the same. It's not, I mean, I understand you were asked, and you do it the way you're asked, but I agree, Joe, on this.
Yeah, and actually, we're revising something in our annual report.
Yeah, we always put them all.
To make that, yeah, clear too. Joe, I just thought of something too. I think we could make some preliminary remarks about our discoveries on the finances and the budget, and then Bud would follow up, and that would lead into our old business. But in that case, I think we should try to take up at least some comments from our Career Center Board, the advisory board. Lyndall, the meeting today, I think we have something, you have something to report, and Emily was there, and as well as other legislators, so.
So you wanna rearrange
I
things
think
a
we
little
should
bit?
rearrange that and then go from me.
Jump
I'll
Lyndall.
ask about,
We're bumping Bud.
yeah.
So we're bumping Bud, moving
Bud.
Lindell to the top, and
Bud
then
and I'll
letting
do
you
a
and Bud go
1-2
together.
before we get to the old
All right.
business of
Gotcha.
reviewing the budget.
That's fine. So
Thank
Lindell,
you.
tell us about the Career
Oh,
Center.
hold on. I'm doing this.
Oh, yeah. You're doing the
Ah,
finance.
I can't find my thing. But it was a really interesting meeting. It was with all the legislators, and that's why Emily was there with the state senators and the House representatives. And I think the bottom line, and these two here can speak much more clearly to it than I can, was of a very interesting commitment to the idea that Act 46 has really made us look carefully
Yeah.
at education in Vermont and try to sort out solutions for equitable education for all our kids. And I was impressed by that level of sincerity and willingness to really work on it. And a lot of different ideas came out, which I think you two can speak to. One in particular was Frank Rucker had come up with some really ingenious ways of funding sending schools payments to the Career Center or vice versa. 3 different options that were really, it looked very hopeful, and he was going to work with one of the state legislators to, she was going to put in a bill to have that happen. That's long overdue.
It's actually something that they've been working on for a couple of years now.
Right,
When
and
Frank was actually working for us, he actually started developing that.
Yeah.
And Valerie, who used to be on the education committee, Valerie Stewart, is continuing to work with him and staying in touch with both Ann Manwaring and I about.
Well,
'cause
that
we're
was
on
very
education
encouraging, that
committee, so.
finally something very concrete was
It
going to
was
happen
great.
with that inequitable funding.
Can I just follow on that just
No,
quickly,
no,
because it's
you two
important.
know much
I
more
don't,
about
I
it.
just want to say one thing, and I think it's really important that, because at the meeting, our Senator Rebecca Ballant was there, and she's on Commerce, Senate Commerce, and Laura Sibilia is also, along with Valerie Stewart, are on Commerce. And this conversation really does encompass what the future of our economy is as well. So we want to make sure that we're connecting with commerce. So a lot of this is covering several committees, and there's a lot of interest in how we can improve what we're doing. So you want to
So,
speak to it?
well, I think the public may be intrigued as well as the board about what Lyndall's referring to. One of the funding proposals is that the amount of money that Leland and Gray now gets as a union school district, any high school in the, public high school in the state gets this, is basically a grant to support the Career Center, and it's a flow-through that happens. Bud may know the name of it, but I know there was a code Frank rattled off I didn't catch, but,
1530 or something like that.
yeah, no?
Yeah, it's, if I may,
Yeah.
it's kind of an odd way that we're forced to account for those funds. We show them as a revenue,
Right.
we show them as an expenditure, and we never see them. There's nothing happened in the operation of my books that is a transaction. So when I'm doing my reporting to the state, I've got to jiggle things around, so I'm reporting that revenue and expenditure that I've never even seen. So if that money just, as it does, goes straight to the Career Center, it didn't show up on our books, I'd have a different number for you in terms of what we're spending per equalized pupil.
Yeah, so the whole point of this was to try to make sure that when we don't have a student here, or any student in a sending school goes to the Career Center, we are certainly paying tuition, but there's also this other money that's flowing that counts as our expenditure that is really a flow-through grant from the state to support the Career Center. So that's what they call technical adjustment that could happen in terms of, the control of, the fiscal control of money. The other idea that was presented by Frank also is pretty cost neutral to a union school district like us, like Leland and Gray, and that is to count the students similar to the way we count for pre-K students in the elementary schools. Some of you aren't familiar with this, but in all our elementary schools, we now are obliged to provide, any school district is obliged to provide education for pre-K students ages 3 and 4. And they count a ratio of 0.46, a little bit less than half of a whole student, and it's only for 10 hours per week of education. And it seems kind of funny you're not counted as a whole student, but what it's based on is the spending grant, and so if the spending grant is near $10,000, 4.46 is $4,600. And as long as the tuition that we pay out to the private pre-K providers or in our own internal school, like Townsend's running their own pre-K, as long as it's under $4,600 per kid, you're okay. It's, you know, it's cost revenue neutral. But the same thing could happen with our Career Center students. It wouldn't matter how many went, whatever the number is, it's a ratio, 1.36 or 2.3 or something like that. And then if that's enough money to cover the tuition, it doesn't have a deleterious effect on our funding and on our pupil costs. It doesn't have a negative effect. So those are two very intriguing ways that the legislators were listening to around the table, and maybe the time is prime now for them to listen to it, because it isn't a particularly new idea, but, you know, there has to be the legislative will to do it. So those of you out there too that want to speak to your legislators, the public certainly, you know, consider looking into that. The other approach really would be cost more money, and that would be for the state to take over the career centers and basically fund them directly, you know, as a separate program. But of course, that's been a proposal about special education and so forth, and, you know, that doesn't seem to have as much political support.
So we'll work with the AOE on this as legislator center.
Right.
And I just wanted to clarify one thing when I say commerce, what I mean is commerce and economic development committees,
Development, yeah.
just for clarity.
There's one thing I would like to add. The very articulate spokesman from Twin Valley, I don't know his name. You all
Taylor.
Bill Taylor,
Yes.
yeah.
He kept pointing to the fact that Twin Valley and Leland Gray were extremely vulnerable, and that they were isolated schools serving isolated populations, and they needed to be preserved. He was quite articulate on that several times in the meetings.
Yeah, and so the conversation there really was about the fact that it is more expensive, you know, on a per student basis to provide for students in a more rural location. And so that brought Ann Mainwaring up about not going by per pupil student cost, but really talking about what we're getting for value and outcome with students. And of course, that makes sense to everybody. You know, you're all nodding as well as everybody around the table there. But as adequacy, there, you know, there've been adequacy studies, and that's what the legislature's engaged, the
They're engaged
FICUS
in,
and Olin study. And
There's
actually
many
Dorinne-
states that do it by.
Dorinne was on a panel there for that study. So, and Francie Marbury from Marlboro. So, you know, that beginning to look at that kind of research and data to see what adequacy means, I would point out that that's the first step. Then the second step is really very problematic for most people to come to agreement about how they know that the student has received an adequate education and
Yeah.
can perform.
That was made clear.
There's a lot of disagreement out there with everybody about what, you know, how they can tell a student is really, you know, sufficiently well educated, and how to assess that, because we
The assessment piece is still, I mean, we're working on that, obviously, and we do have the ed quality standards.
Yeah.
And now we have the ed quality reviews, so
Yeah, and,
I'm thinking we're heading in the right direction.
and the PLPs, I think, is a positive
Absolutely.
direction, and, you know, I'm not pessimistic about the directions we're heading, but
It's not simple.
it's gonna be a, you know, it'll take a lot of engagement by the public over many years to get to where we need to be, to really meet every student's needs.
But it was a good meeting. Everybody listened and was respectful, a lot of ideas. It's good.
Busy.
Nice. Makes me want to go to, get out and go to another meeting.
Well, it's a
And
good
you had a good
meal.
lunch.
Right, I knew that. That was the other motivator. All right,
Let's make
thank
lunch
you.
for you there.
All right, Stephen, Bud,
Yeah, so I would just say that Bud actually put out some information to his board members this afternoon or early afternoon, I've forgotten the time, which was responding to what you requested, and he'll go into that and also have hard copies for you if you didn't read it. But there is late breaking news because Bud got the Brad James equalized pupil count. What was it, Sunday night at 9:30, Bud, something like that?
Yeah.
So he's been scrambling with trying to update, and so that's the basis upon which some things have changed regarding the budget. And so there's good news and bad news about the budget, which I'll leave to Bud to present.
Okay.
I'll just give you a little tickler there.
Who needs a hard copy?
Don't hesitate, folks, we have plenty.
This is the one that was on the computer this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sure. It's okay. You may need to refer to it.
Your credit card in there.
They have a blinking light that decides
They're coming down.
the current.
Even I need one, yeah. I haven't seen it.
Is there an extra?
Yeah.
Right. How would you really handle it?
I got it.
I got them on my.
Great. I think just to start on a positive note, one of the things that we were asked to look at is where do we see our fund balance being at the end of this fiscal year, which would drive any decisions about raising additional money to attack a negative fund balance. Now, as you may recall, our estimate of our fund balance for the end of the last fiscal year ending June 30 was that we would have a projected negative fund balance of $75,358. As I'm sure you all recall, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, but additional monies were raised for FY16 to address that deficit. Now, doing an analysis of where I see expenditures ending come June 30 and where we see revenues, gazing in my crystal ball now, and I do have to say that things can change between now and June 30. Student populations can change and students' needs can change. But right now, I'm expecting that our revenues will exceed expenditures by approximately $98,000, which would result in a positive fund balance at the end of the current fiscal year. So I don't see any need for the board to raise additional funds to deal with a fund balance that we are expecting to be positive.
That's the good news.
Now, the bad news is, as you know, we were working with estimates of the equalized pupil count, and I based those estimates on some guidance from Brad James. And Brad did produce those numbers. They're a little lower than what we had as an estimate, just about, by about 6 students, a little bit less. So what that does is takes a budget that was, we believed was going to be within the spending threshold in education spending per pupil, and now is above that threshold by a little over $42,000. So there are some decisions for the board to make. There are some, I can give some suggestions. One would be to approve the warning of a budget in the amount that does not exceed the threshold, and to direct your administration to adjust the budget to meet that bottom line. Obviously, since we really didn't have these numbers until the beginning of the business day yesterday, we really haven't had a chance to, as an administration, look through that budget and propose any, well thought out changes, I guess is probably the best way to put it. The other alternative is to take some monies that we have earmarked in buildings and grounds and maintenance. I've never been an advocate for stripping out your building maintenance monies, but that is an option, and I believe it's an option that's been on the table in prior years. The other option is to, would be, and I'm not recommending this, but go with the budget as is, understanding that there's a 2-for-1 penalty for that $42,000 over the threshold, and that's those are the options that I see for the board. None of which are particularly great, I have to say.
That's the bad news.
Thank you.
And just to point out, there were some requests for the other information. We've got your staff to student ratios there. We have a graph showing our projections with student population. There's also a graph that shows you the trends statewide, that same kind of information. So hopefully, we've given you what you asked for in terms of turning that around for you. I wish I could have gotten it to you before, but we've got the equalized pupil, the preliminary equalized pupil numbers. We don't expect those to change much, if at all, but we're still waiting for other information that will inform things like tax rates. I don't have the common level of appraisal for the towns. I don't have the last word from Agency of Education on what all the grants will be. You know, we're estimating what our special ed revenues will be. We'll get more information on that in the coming days. So we're working, as always, with the best information we have right now, but some of it is not final. Thanks.
Thanks, Bud.
The other thing that you requested was the tax rates. That's on the page after the budgets. You see that? It's a bit like this. You got it in there. Because this is published in the report. This isn't the way it'll be, you know, this isn't exactly the same format, but that gives you an idea of comparing what's happening to your tax rates in each town, projected on your share of the expense of the operation here at Leland and Grad.
And just to clarify, those tax rates that I'm showing are based on the budget as it appears now with the penalty included.
Oh, with the penalty included, okay. So they could be, they would go down if we stuck with the threshold somewhat.
They go down a little or substantially if you pull out the penalty?
Well, it's not a huge percentage of the budget, the 42,000, so
Right.
we can expect a
very large percentage drop in the tax
Yeah,
rates.
Much less than,
Okay.
less than 10% of the budget.
Right, all right.
A little over 10.
So,
Now, can I just add one other thing?
Sure.
What is very interesting to your public and the boards is there doesn't seem to be, quite often, there doesn't seem to be a relationship between what happens to the budget. Let's take Townsend here. So the Leland Gray budget is going up, but their tax rate's going down, right? As far as we can project right now.
So, are you referring to this?
Yes.
yeah, this chart is, I was gonna ask Bud to kind of walk me
Or
through
you
this,
can.
or you
Okay.
can. But, you know,
It's not clear.
there's the first set of numbers, and then there's the calculated with fiscal 16 common level of appraisal, and the numbers they're different, and then there's there's two columns of numbers with the number
Needs to be explained.
to the right, yeah,
Okay.
if you could just
Okay.
explain how that works.
But you want to,
Yeah, I'll do that. In retrospect, I should have put the columns in a different order, because we're used to looking at the prior year to the left and the new year to the right. They're actually reversed. So the top column, the column in the middle
yeah?
is tax rates without considering any adjustment for CLA. So, because if you recall, when you go through the tax rate calculation, first you end up with a tax rate, then the common level of appraisal comes into play. The line below that, it's using the common level of appraisal for this fiscal year. I don't have the new fiscal year's common level of appraisal numbers yet. So that's an assumption that is not going to be 100% accurate, that the CLAs for each town will remain the same. That gives you the numbers in that middle column on the bottom, which you can compare to fiscal year 16, which is on the right.
Okay, so 17's in the center. At the bottom there, those percentages that they see by Brookline at 104 point something, 112, that's the CLA
CLA for
that town.
yeah,
Okay, that's the 2016 CLA.
correct.
Okay, and then above that is the percentage of, that's the share I take, that's not quite right either. What are the percentages appearing above that under the 1.6975?
Each one of the member towns, there's a calculation based on their percentage of students who attend both their own K-6 schools and attend
Okay, that's why.
10 Leland and Gray.
That's why it doesn't have to be 100%.
No, it's a different formula.
PK 6
So,
plus Leland and Gray.
yeah, so the numbers that are showing there are the percentage of those towns' students, equalized pupils, who are attending Leland and Gray.
Okay, so which one do you think we should be looking at when we compare, if we're sitting in Brookline? Last year, the tax rate was .6583, right?
Right.
Okay, and if we look to the left, at the bottom section, that's what we think, if the CLA stays the same, that's what we project,
That's correct.
okay?
Wait, if the CLA stays the same in Brookline, do we go back over to the .64?
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
Okay, so
That's what I
Brookline,
just tried to
And this
get
is-
straight,
okay.
yeah, and then, as Bud says, those two columns would have been well to reverse them. Okay,
I have a question.
Sure.
Bud, so when my neighbors come to me and say, why are our school taxes going up 10 cents? How do I answer them?
Doesn't, Wyndham's going down, they're currently
Going down.
.8194, and we're projecting .610.
Right is 16, the center is 17.
6810.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
You set them out of order.
6810.
Oh, back, okay, I'm seeing 8
The
So
only-
you're seeing a decline.
the only one that's going
In
up,
that case,
the only one going up,
I think they're gonna be coming offering you a beer.
I think you're gonna be okay,
Thanks.
but,
Jamaica,
well, Jamaica's, so,
very slightly.
as we see here, if the
Town.
CLAs stay the same, you know, your situation in Jamaica is the only one that's gonna rise
Goes
very
down a little bit.
Slightly.
slightly,
Newfane
right?
goes,
But it'll depend on the CLA, because what's above
Right.
has no CLA, and
Yes,
that's more for towns.
It's using the CLA from 2016, right, I mean, from the FY16. And that CLA
Can be very variable.
can be quite variable in these small towns, depending on how many pieces of property sell or what
We've seen
price.
some incredible fluctuations in Brookline over the
Okay.
years, so it's something to really keep an eye on.
Yeah, so I guess the bottom line is, this is the best information I have for you, but I think
We all know that this isn't where we're gonna land.
right.
Well, in fact, we won't know that CLA till later in, after the, wait a minute, does the CLA come out before the town meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was checking some documents from last year, the letters with the CLAs for all the towns arrived in our office last year on December 22nd.
Just in time for the holidays.
Can I ask one question? The CLA, like Jamaica's is 112.48%, right?
Yeah.
Or was. Does that mean that our appraisals are 12.48% too high for what the houses are selling for?
Yeah,
Okay.
the houses
So
are selling
that's
for lower,
hurting
that's
us?
what they're,
Well,
I thought if your appraisal
depends on
was
if you're
too
a realtor or
low.
not.
well, it's advantageous if you're over 100 in terms of what.
Oh, for
Yeah.
calculating tax rates, it certainly is.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
But
what
it
I thought,
doesn't necessarily
okay.
mean it's
So
good
that's what I thought,
sales
if you're
of
under,
homes.
that's
But
not
for
good.
example, if it went down from 112 to 105,
Then,
you'd see
We'd
you'd
see
see your
some.
taxes go up more,
but
right?
being
Tax rate go up more.
overappraised is good,
Yeah,
because we're
Well,
paying more
for
taxes.
tax rates.
Right,
it's bad for
But
you
it
when
may
you want
not-
to sell your property.
But it may
but
not
it's-
be good for everybody. Everybody might not look at that CLA as a good.
right, but for a tax rate, it is good.
Tax rate's good for
Yeah.
selling, it's good for buying.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any more questions on the information that we got?
I did it,
Sure.
Let's make
well,
sure.
not on this sheet, so
No,
are
that's.
we still on this sheet?
No, we can, if anybody has questions on this sheet, please. Otherwise, there's a lot of material here. Anybody, if you're still, any questions you have on any of it?
yes, I have not a question, but I just want to say that if, my feeling is on that $42,000 overage that we have, for, speaking for the folks in Wyndham, since our taxes are going down 10 cents, we probably will still vote the budget in with that extra 42,000.
That's the down the road discussion. We're just
Okay.
still asking questions on the documents.
But it's a good
Go
point.
ahead.
So, and I'll come back to that when we
Yeah,
get to that discussion.
fine.
But, the student-staff ratios, I just
Yeah.
thought that it was important that we have a report on that. And I gotta tell you, that one caught me by surprise, because I thought last year we were at 9-something, 9.2 or something to student-teacher ratio, and now I see we're 8.24, maybe I'm thinking of
This is,
FY15.
yeah, well, perhaps,
So I
yeah.
mean, did we go from 9 to 8? I was just surprised we were in the 8.24 in FY16 currently, and projected is 8.4.
Is that only
That's
including
teacher.
teachers?
I'm just looking at the teacher, although the student-staff ratio is half that, essentially. So 4.44 last year to 1, and 4.50 this year to 1. Projected, I should say, not this year.
So remember, we spoke about the information system we have. So this is a printout of all the schools and the FTEs for teachers. And that's where this comes from, because this comes out of APTA where the people are getting paid. So we know what FTE they are because their contracts have to say that. So the pieces and fractions of people are put together. That's why you end up with a number like 38.46.
So, Stephen, if you could remind me
Yeah.
what the recommended student-teacher ratio is. I'm not.
Statewide, we'd love to be at 11. But, you know, if we go from
But
10
I
to
thought at
11,
high
it'd be
school,
75
this
million.
is different than, that's average.
Yeah, that's
across
over
all
the
grades.
state,
So I
yeah.
thought at high school it was to 15?
Uh,
Or 13? Maybe it's 13 something.
I guess I don't have that
I
in my
can't
head, I'm
remember.
sorry to say.
It's not
I
a
don't know what
requirement
the
yet.
agency-
The reason I ask is because there's an awful lot of conversation going on, and has been for a number of
Right.
years, around.
The ratios that are unsustainable.
Well, not just that, but around actually mandating. And I
I worked in
I
such a
have-
state.
I have concerns always about mandating, given the fact that, you know, school sizes are all different, and I don't think it's a good way for us to be controlling the way we run our schools. So I've been against that, but when we have to, when we're looking at this, it makes it more challenging. It's hard to get around explaining an 8.2 or 4 per 1.
And if you go to the projected enrollments too, you'll see that
It's clearly
this
getting-
board and this administration certainly will continue to have tremendous challenges in terms of trying to provide for our students with a reduced number of staff.
And that one is pretty scary,
Yeah.
you know. Is that lower than what we thought it was gonna be? Because I didn't think we were down at 274 in 2020.
If you look at your annual report, you'll see
I
that it
forgot
has a
it.
much different shape. You see in here? Here's the annual report.
I got it. I don't remember what page it's on, but
It's,
Do we ever
Here it
get
is.
info on how that compares to the NAP, the statewide enrollment?
Well, that's why we provided a statewide graph for you to see that
That's right here.
it's going down as well, but it's not,
Doesn't go to 2020 though.
it doesn't go out as far.
okay, so we are down lower even on 2019. So our projections have
The 20, yeah.
have changed quite a lot
They
even
moved
from
o-
last year.
Yeah, the dip in the curve moved to the left, basically.
Because, yeah, by quite a number of
Yeah,
students.
20 or so. Yeah.
Love.
So instead of 297 projected in 2019, now our numbers look like 286 in 2019. And 274 in
And whereas this
2020.
says 350, this year we'll publish 318 or 319, something like that.
So that's what makes me go back to this
Right.
student-teacher ratio and
These two graphs didn't answer my question though.
Okay, sorry.
what's your question?
Howie.
Yeah, because of I want to know what the projected enrollment is in Vermont compared to our projected enrollment. This just shows historical enrollment.
Yes.
On this chart, it doesn't give us any information as to what we
Um,
project in the state and
I may
how our
have
school
that.
is standing with
I may have
compared
it
to
all
the rest
up.
of the state.
And that's good.
I will tell you, I'll look and see if I have it with me, because I do have it, but I will tell you that the projections, we just got it. In fact, if you went on the JFO website, you'll see it there under the legislative briefing that happened on December 1st, because there was one slide, I think, that showed that, but it still has not yet bottomed out. it is, as far out as we can project, it's still declining statewide.
But my question is our decline parallel to the state decline? We decline faster than the state, meaning students are leaving our school
That's
and
a good
going
question.
someplace else? Or are we declining, at a slower rate than the state, meaning we're gaining relative?
Well,
or
the
are
fact that
just
we
consistent?
declined faster than our own projections makes me think that we probably are declining a little faster than statewide, but we have to look at that if that's what you're looking for. I'll
That's
see.
the information I'm really interested in, because that's really what's showing us how we're doing compared to our neighboring schools in the rest of the state.
Yeah.
Stephen, I would imagine similar conversations are happening at the elementary school?
Yeah.
Because these are based on our elementary
Yeah.
enrollments.
Right, this is based on, actually, I went out to find grade 9, this year, and then grade 3 this year, because that's what's, you compare those two, because 4 years from now, the 9th graders will be 12th graders, they'll be graduating, so they're gone. And that number exceeds what we have for a 3rd grade pool, which would be entering the 7th grade 4 years from now. That's where you put these things together. Now, there's some guesswork involved there. There's 16 3rd graders in Dover. Right now, we're not getting very many kids from Dover. There was a time when we got quite a few from Dover. I can't predict 4 years from now that we're gonna get many more than what we're getting now, so I only counted about 3 of those coming in out of the 16. But who knows? I don't know those parents, those families, we're not that, sophisticated in terms of commitments for future enrollment. So, you can look at the number conservatively or optimistically, and I took something sort of in the middle of the road there. I just gave Dover a specific example because they have the largest 3rd grade around. Anyway, and I counted some students coming from Athens and from out of SU, out of the Wyndham Central Supervised Union Schools, because we traditionally have attracted students in the 7th and 8th grade from Athens, Grafton, and so forth. Then I counted just about all the Wardsboro kids that usually attend. So, that's the best you can do when you're looking at that far in advance. And I certainly didn't want to persuade myself we would, 4 years from now, we'd be in any better shape or any worse shape than, so middle of the road's where I'm at.
Go ahead, Patty.
Didn't
Pass this
last
around
week, we mentioned, it's a little tiny ray of hope, that the pre-Ks were actually larger than
Yes.
expected in a few schools?
Yeah. Dover is holding its own or slightly larger. Marlboro, I think, projects to be, was it down 2 or something like that? It's not very significant. Wardsboro's gonna stay in about the 50s and upper 50s, and the same thing with Jamaica, as far as we can see.
Because Jeremy was saying they were expecting like 10, somewhere in Chester, they're expecting 10 more pre-K kids than they thought. And there was some other school that was projecting more pre-K.
Well,
And they
Newbrook has quite a large kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you have to keep in mind, you have to compare that with their 6th grades. That's really the what tells you
Yeah.
whether the school's getting bigger or not, whether you have more kids coming along. If you have a big kindergarten, like you got 20 kindergartners, but then you happen to have 26 graders leaving.
Oh, I know,
Trades off,
but
you
it might
Let's hope.
Yeah,
be a ray of hope,
Yeah.
it's, to think that hopefully.
well, actually, it was mentioned today that this also is a national phenomenon of rural populations.
Oh, it's very, very clear. We have been moving toward urban,
Whether you go to,
from the rural to the urban.
whether you're talking about North
quite
Dakota,
some
West Virginia, whatever, you go to rural Arizona, Utah,
And-
whatever, it's, this,
And for some states, that's maybe not as significant in all ways, but for our state, since we really don't have urban areas, and we are surrounded by states that have some big urban areas within 5 hours from us in a lot of places, makes it more challenging for them.
Did you get an idea, Howie?
No, these graphs don't give the information either, though.
They don't compare them, but the graph on the bottom there was the one that talks about student population in the state of Vermont.
Yeah, but I don't see, it doesn't project forward, it only shows, again, it's not a projection, it's just a historical graph.
Historic.
I found that one out. Maybe
Well,
I gave you the
that's-
wrong one. There's one that goes out.
Pretty small print.
Yeah.
Yeah. With respect to the documents, other than the research that
2025.
they're trying to do.
So just about-
Yeah.
2025 is pretty far out.
So we're not
Farther out than I'm
seeing,
gonna last, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
I think basically it says that, read the headline on it, it says it's not
Why
expected to be
don't you pass it
changed.
down this way so you can see that it basic, since it's such a pointed conversation here, let's have
It just
the
happens.
camera get a chance too, right? Can you see that?
Yeah.
It still doesn't, it doesn't say
So,
how we compare.
this goes out
It
to
doesn't compare
225,
us to them, obviously,
2025.
Because this was something, this is a statewide,
Right.
this was a legislative briefing, statewide trend, and it basically says that every year, I keep waiting for the year they say we're no longer declining. And, I mean, this is a huge issue for us from the economic perspective. We were talking about it earlier under the Career Center meeting today. We need to continue to talk about this. This is a big deal for us. It's not just, doesn't just impact our school, but it impacts our state. And we need to keep talking about how we're going to improve the economy of the state.
I have a question for Bud and Stephen, and maybe Emily has some insight into this too, when it comes to the student-staff ratios. And that has to do with schools that have a higher population of students with special needs, as well as students from low-income backgrounds. For example, Leland and Gray is the first school I've worked in that has a school social worker. And when I started 6 years ago, she had less of a school social worker role and more of the after-school program coordinator role. And as we have identified increasing needs, as it has happened around the state and around the country, and because we received the 21st Century Grant, we were able to hire through the grant for the after-school program, separately funded outside of our local budget, and utilize her role more fully as a school social worker. And I mean, I'm not talking about this person, but had we not been recognizing the trends in our community, while correspondingly the percentage of students eligible for free meals went up by 1/3. So I wonder about that.
Well, actually, that was brought up at the meeting today too. The legislators are very much aware of this issue. But the question remains, all right, so what can we do about it? Because traditionally, one of the reasons we have low student-teacher ratios is because when we have a problem and we have a need and we have a group of students who have need, we hire someone to address that need. That's the natural purpose and mission of education. But I think that we have to challenge ourselves in the future, particularly, I'm now speaking in the future when I won't be at your service, but I do project that you'll be increasingly challenged as a board and administration to figure out how you can instruct and address these needs differently in a more effective, cost-effective way in terms of not depending on an adult ratio of 4.8 students to every adult in the building. Or, I mean, actually, if we could have all the adults in the building each take 4 kids for their personalized learning plan, we'd be all set, wouldn't we? I mean, 5 kids, we'd be all set. Well, I'm being facetious, of course, but I'm just saying that we have, we have those numbers because it's not because we're just trying to hire people. This is not an employment agency. We're trying to get the job done and meet kids' needs.
Which is one of the reasons why I have resisted going down that path toward required student-teacher ratios. Recommended is fine, required is just, it's a big struggle for me, although I think the conversation is still gonna continue.
Yeah.
So, I'll continue to watch it and look into it and research it. But I will say that there's you're talking about student-teacher ratio and that impact on student-teacher ratio. There is a weighting system. We talked about that down at the Career Center today. I still have yet to find the criteria around a 1.13 for a high school student. Nobody seems to have
Entirely
any.
arbitrary.
It seems very arbitrary. Why, we used to be 1.25, and then it dropped one year to a 1.13. There's reasons given, but they never seem to be based on any real issues that we're addressing. I mean, clearly we have driver ed and many other courses that we need to take in the high school.
It
which
was
is
higher at
why
one
there's a
time.
way. It was 1.25, and now it's 1.13. So I continue to pursue this at the legislative level. It's not just high school either. It's low socioeconomic, special ed.
That's right.
There are weighting systems for
Always.
different students. And I think we need to continue to pursue that and find out whether those ratios, those weighting systems are appropriate. And so I'm hoping that this year we can continue talking about that. Kind of got lost in our conversation last year, but I'd like to be able to continue to do it.
Lyndall, then how?
Yeah, I'd like to pedal backwards to something that Stephen just said about not just teachers involved in personalized learning plans. In the school where I worked, we opened it up to every staff. The custodian had an advisory thing, the nurse did, the secretaries did. It was incredibly successful. These were key people in the life of the school, and they really, by doing that, we were able to have many more kids served in a smaller setting in the way that their needs were met. So it's just an interesting way that you can do it without necessarily only using teachers.
Yeah, that's an example of how we need to challenge our thinking.
Yeah, and it worked. The custodian was amazingly successful. Kids
Yeah.
would come in early to see what was happening with the boilers, and it's interesting.
And of course, we have to take care that, it doesn't work out for everybody, but,
No, no. Sorry, it went backwards in the conversation.
Well, given that the reality is, no matter how you slice and dice it, less kids, less money, you're gonna have less teachers. What provisions do we have in our contracts with our teachers for doubling up on courses? In other words, is there a provision in the contract to encourage our staff, if you're a French teacher, to learn to get certified in Spanish, if you're a science teacher, to learn to get an additional certification in math? So as we shrink our staff, which we will, we can still continue to offer our same courses. Can we do something in our next contract negotiation to encourage that?
We support that now.
I think, I would go farther to say, I think we encourage that
Yeah.
now, and we actually pay for professional development. And in fact, to go to the master's level, we pay even more. But I would suggest that there's also other ways to address it as.
well, you have to have, there are two sides to it. One is our encouragement, and the money is available for professional development. The flip side of that is, does the employee or the teacher have an interest and want to do that? And that, I think if you're asking the question, do we have the ability to oblige a teacher to get another certification? That's not advisable, really, from an education point of view. If
But can we
someone-
incentivize it to encourage that?
Well, people that are interested should be following up, and we do have incentives for that. They are gonna get paid more. Not only are we gonna pay for the course, but they're gonna get paid more when they have that increased education. The salary schedule is based on two things, on years of experience and on education. Joe?
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, Patty.
I think, it would take a while for this to make a difference, but I have friends who have kids who are looking at colleges and stuff and looking at majors, and any ones that are looking at education are looking at dual qualifying dually for
Yeah.
special ed and a regular teaching type course. A lot are majoring in special ed.
And I will just say, having
For
said.
their security and their ability to get a
Exactly,
job.
exactly.
That it's
Driven by that.
The incentive is natural, because that's how you create job safety for yourself, is by making yourself
A more valuable
valid.
employee.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've been sitting on our local standards board for probably 20 years now, and close to it. And I am amazed at how many more teachers today are dual certified, that they have many different certifications, sometimes more than 2, sometimes 3. So that never used to be true in the past. They would
I only have 5.
Well, administrators clearly do have more, but I mean, teachers even early, young teachers coming into the
Well,
system.
and that's a
have
good point,
more-
when I'm interviewing all new teachers, and,
They
you know,
are.
they're asking the question, well, what's the future? And I said, well, always invest in yourself, because, you know, your greater ability to teach multiple subjects, even as an elementary school, general education, elementary endorsement, if you can be endorsed in other areas that you enjoy and you like to teach and you're interested in, you're going to be a much more valuable employee.
So what we used to see is like, you'd have dual endorsements in like health and physical education, or family and consumer science and health, that sort of thing. Now you're seeing like math and foreign language, you know,
Science and
science
social studies.
and, you know, early ed or something. I mean, it's really quite amazing. A lot of special ed dual endorsements, you know, that we didn't used to have. You'll have general education and then a special education endorsement as well. So I think, you know, it is happening.
If I could say that, just a quick count, I can think of no less than 10 faculty members who are either duly certified or in the process of getting the second endorsement because of the consolidation of positions. You may remember last year the conversations about French. We were still able to do a full FTE reduction in staff, and yet we still offer levels 1 through 4 French because it has been absorbed by other teachers who are
Yeah.
either certified or in the certification process.
Excellent.
And then with Stephen's support, they have a provisional license. But if we have 37 FTEs next year, or 38 this year, at least 10 of them are teaching in more than one discipline. So
Excellent.
it's a work in progress,
doing that.
but I think they understand that well, and they have really stepped up.
And that trend will continue.
I'm sure.
Gonna happen.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
required basically in Germany.
Do you want to
Is it-
talk about
Yeah,
that,
like,
Julian?
in my home country, Germany, I mean, every teacher has at least 2 or 3. Most of them actually have 3 different endorsements. Yeah.
What would be the common ones, Julian, you don't know?
I mean, my main teacher had math, politics, physics.
Uh-huh.
I think he had PE as well.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, there was crazy ones like English and religion and some other
Uh-huh.
really all across the spectrum.
Interesting.
It's good to know we're not that different, you know?
Yeah.
They definitely see it as a win, and so do the teachers. One really powerful example is that our teacher who teaches middle school health also teaches a lot of middle school PE courses, and so there's a lot of interdisciplinary work just in the 2 areas. So, because she's working with the same kids.
Well, you know, this is the information that counters the doom and gloom that everybody, you know,
Yeah.
everybody tries to project a crisis onto our school situation, but the reality is, less kids will equal less teachers down the road.
Yeah.
We can
Except for
offer.
that.
Well, but that part, you know, there's a lag between cutting
mean, I'm
back
not-
on teachers and the student population, you know, but teachers are retiring out of the system, and we're making those adjustments, and cost will come down. The
I'll
system- the
give
whole
you that, but
system's
I've
gonna
also
shrink.
been hearing that for a very long time, and I'm still looking at these realities, which is what it says
Well,
here,
there's-
and that, you know, I mean, I hear you, and I think we are heading in the path, down that path, because it's being brought to our attention that we have no choice, plus we can no longer afford it anymore. I mean, we were very comfortable here at Leland and Gray for quite some time, being able to have a low student-teacher ratio, and we're comfortable with it, because we still had the enrollment. But now, we're starting to say, wait, this isn't even working for us, because our enrollment has declined enough. It's happening to us slightly later than I think maybe some others. Some have been feeling it a lot earlier than
Well,
us.
those increasing costs are part of the increasing mandates that come down from the state, if you wanna know
Some
what
of it
that
is
is.
that, not
It's-
all of it.
Yeah, but.
Some of it
well,
is that.
You know, you can't keep asking schools
But it's
to
also
do
need.
more. And there's your kids, so, you know, there you go, you just explained it. Stop, you know, if the state wants to see that number stop going up, they need to rein in the demands they're making on the system. And
It's not so simple as reining in the need. I think that we need to find a way to fund the education system, regardless of our staffing levels, that communities can afford. And it's getting to the point where I don't know how we can continue to do it without making some kind of change internally. And that's what I'm hoping we're
In
gonna
addition,
continue down along
well,
this conversation with
I
at
agree
Winter
there.
Central.
Right, that's a whole nother conversation. Back to our budget.
Yeah.
we've gone through all the documents. We know Howie said his constituents are fine with the going over the threshold. Anyone else have a feeling about their constituents' reaction to that? I know, speaking for Townsend, they will not support a budget over the spending threshold.
I agree with that.
Jamaica's always been very supportive of all the budgets. I think they've never not passed in Jamaica, but.
Never had the
I
2-for-1 penalty
think-
either.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying that I think that might be the line in the sand.
So I will say that I don't, because I think the Newfane voters have been incredibly supportive of the Leland and Gray budget, always. And just like Wyndham has as well. It's not, I can't remember the last time Newfane didn't pass a budget, but it's a matter of whether I feel comfortable asking them to support this, and I don't feel comfortable asking them to go over the threshold. I think that we need to, given this student-staff ratios and all the other data that came to us today, I think it's really important that we, although I will tell you, I would prefer, given the 3 scenarios that Bud shared with us, if we're going to try to stay under the threshold, which I hope this board will, that we allow the administration to make the decision about where they want to make those cuts, because I don't think it's appropriate for us at this time to dictate to where those cuts should be.
No. Patty?
I think it's important to somehow let the public know how this conundrum we found ourselves in, and encourage them to contact their legislators and talk about this is because of the cap on Act 46.
Threshold.
The threshold and the amount you can, and that's why this is happening, and that we're in this position.
So
Well-
can I just speak to that, because I asked that today?
Yeah.
I asked the question of all, there were school board members there from Wyndham Southeast and Wyndham Southwest. Was there anyone from the Wyndham Northeast? I don't think so
No.
today. And I asked for people to give me feedback on that spending threshold, and I didn't get one response.
No, it was pretty quiet.
No one said a word to me, because I said what the House Education Committee is looking at, because of what you just said. The House Education Committee has had plenty of feedback saying that the allowable growth provision is very challenging for school boards this year. And so we've met once to talk about it, and you know about that. So I asked today down there and if they would give me feedback on how they were addressing it, and not one person even responded. So I think if there were a lot of concerns in Wyndham Southeast, I would have thought somebody would have brought it up. Not one word, which seemed odd to me.
Must have
Yeah,
been
it does
done
vary with each,
to the point.
It does.
each town. We, you
Depends
know,
on where
our,
we're going.
What you spent before, et
We
cetera.
didn't have much of an issue with
no,
it
our
early
school districts, Bud, which district is close to the threshold now with the new data?
I haven't,
Done the
Run
new
them
figures
all.
on everybody.
it doesn't look as, generally speaking, it doesn't look as
Critical as it did before we got the
One
new
town, we were
numbers.
concerned about one town, but
How's Townsend doing? Because they're they're even a higher spending on the list than us. Leland and Gray was on within the top 20, I think, and Townsend's higher than us.
Well, these are preliminary numbers. I was working on them late this afternoon. But there's a couple of things that go into Townsend spending. One is, for this fiscal year, they increased their revenues to address a negative fund balance. They will not have to do that next year, so that's a cut in their expenditures. They also, they had a slight increase in equalized pupil count, and they had an increase in, looks like they'll have an increase in special education revenue that I have to confirm. But all that being said, as I look at those numbers right now, their per pupil cost looks like it's dropping.
There's so many variables with this, and that's what really is why, you know, anybody at the table we sat at today, Lyndall, who's knowledgeable about the ins and outs of all these, probably is thinking, well, do I have anybody that's really hurting? Now, until this morning, when Bud and I consulted about the latest numbers on Leland and Gray, we thought this was, you know, we were under the threshold.
Yeah.
And it's surprising, because Townsend has one of the smallest allowable growths of any of my school districts. But because of these other variables, they're gonna be okay. It's, you know, things sometimes fall your way. As Howie pointed out regarding the tax rate apparently in Wyndham as to projected for COA stays the same. I shared something with you, though, that I hope brings a focus to what your decision is tonight. We will have to warn an article and have the voters vote on this at the ballot box in each town, right? And it'll say, Article 1, Leland Gray School Budget, shall the voters of the school district approve the school board to expend, and it'll be whatever number you decide tonight, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. So you vote yes or no on that, but the rest of the explanation is, and required by law, it is required that we say, it is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of so many dollars per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is such and such a percent higher or lower than the spending for the current year. And the budget you have presented before you, that would say 3.19 or 3 point, what is it? Sorry.
It's a slightly different.
Oh, because it's equalized spending. It isn't what appears in this budget as published. It is, what is it, Bud? You have it figured? Because not all the money that's in here is counted, of course, for this particular thing. But this is now required by law.
This is the,
No.
this is the language required if you exceed it, or this is the language?
No, everybody has to.
Flat out, this is our new
This
vote
is the
language.
new-
Standardized
This is the
new
new
language
standard.
for articles
Because it was-
regarding the budget. Yeah, because
It's too easy to pass our budgets.
the legislators want, well, that's a one way to look at it.
Accountability.
There was accountability,
There you
that
go.
was why it was passed, and, so this is the same at Stratton or whatever town in the state?
This has been contemplated for quite some time, pass this year, with my support.
Well, Bud's still looking at that, I mean, that's the, you know, the threshold is another question, but that's what's gonna be published on your article, where the voter goes to the ballot
That
box.
just does, you know, that just takes away the, I wish somebody would please put in a petition to go back to our, to get rid of Australian ballot and go
Yeah.
back to our meeting format, because that just does all the bad work. You know,
There's no discussion.
there's no discussion, there's no explanation, it's just
Can we
awful.
put that on the ballot for the town meeting to go back to lose this Australian
I
ballot?
mean, for the annual meeting.
The annual meeting, yeah.
Well, that came as a motion from the voters to go to an Australian ballot, because they came and spoke at a meeting
One
before I was on the
person.
board.
One person.
Well, they petitioned
I was
the,
there.
they petitioned it, and so it was,
Yes.
came as a petition. You know,
And it passed.
and we've brought it up, boy, for the last,
Yeah.
all the annual meetings
Begging.
I've been at, begging somebody to make the
Someone
petition to
please
do it
do it.
again, because as a board, we don't think it's necessarily the right thing for us to do, since it was changed by a petition of the
The
voters.
answer is
For us to
yes,
take it
you
back.
can.
You can.
We need somebody to circulate a petition to get this in motion, is that the way it
Yes.
started off?
We would need we would need a petition.
Does it have
At
to
our
be in
meeting.
each town, or?
It's gotta
If I
be a
can just
certain
clarify
percentage of
There's
Go
a-
the
ahead.
voters.
Yes, the answer to your question is, yes, we can put it on.
No.
If this board votes, we vote on the articles, we can easily put it on. We've contemplated it nearly every single year. And the reason we've always hesitated to actually put it on ourselves is for the very reason that Joe just said. It came from the community, it should, and enough community members have said to us, we think that it should go away, and we've told them, well, here's the way it should go. You know, you can get that on the warning. And people have said they're going to do it, and then it's never happened. I think this board, you know, we can decide
Well,
again.
We're members of the community.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we can do it, I'm just saying that it was, there were legitimate reasons why we never put it back on there. I was on the board at the time, the board itself stood up and spoke against the article, did not encourage it to happen, felt that it was, for all the reasons we've stated many, many times, a loss of connection with actually what you're voting on, being one of them. And it passed overwhelmingly. There were a number of things going on that year, including bond votes around additions at the school, and I think there was a lot of high emotions and stuff, and yet I think, you know, it seems to me that in my mind, if the voters really do feel uncomfortable about this, they probably would come to us and with a petition, or at least come to a meeting and say, we want you to put it on as an article, even without. We've had no concentrated effort to do that. We've had random people over the years who've come and said, we should do it. I wonder, I think it would be a great question to ask at town meeting if we don't put it on our warning this year, as to whether people really are comfortable. Would they rather have the annual vote by Australian ballot? Is it easier for them than to have to go out to a meeting? Is that why?
It saves money, doesn't it? To vote, to not have to.
We
to not to have-
we pay for the town clerks.
Right, you have to pay for the town clerks, but
but
if we
we
do this
have
as
to-
part, if we vote as part of our regular meeting, we don't have to have the Australian ballot, we save that money.
Right, I mean, I don't know how much money, I don't know if you remember, Bud, how much money it is to pay for the town clerk. We print the ballots ourselves, and we pay to run the polls, but
I do
you know,
not remember what this.
yeah, I don't either.
Of all the numbers, I try to keep in my head.
Yeah, that, I don't really remember either, but,
Especially the year we had to do 3 votes.
and I think some towns ask for it and other towns maybe don't.
I remember one of the reasonings they gave for going to an Australian ballot was thinking that we'd have more voters because they could go at their leisure to vote and stuff, and that didn't happen.
Well, I mean, it depends on the year we're comparing.
How would it
Yeah,
affect
but
voters?
for the most part, it
if
didn't.
we went to the meeting version rather than the Australian ballot version? Like, do we have?
Depends on if we decide we want to cut transportation or something like that, then you get a pretty big turnout. There were years when I literally remember, and I'm sure the rest of you would remember a time, even when I was on the board, when the main gym was filled with people. But generally, we would have less than 100 people at our annual meeting. And it really was very low turnout. Now we get pretty consistently, you know, depending on if we have a snowstorm or not, you know, 300 to 400 votes, I think, pretty consistently, depending on a year, whether there's a big issue.
But when you have 100 people in the room and they're voting on the budget that night, you have 100 people who are knowledgeable and have asked the questions and know what they're voting on. That's not 300 people who are reading a thing like this and saying, oh, it's going up by, you know, they know nothing about the background behind that unless they've watched the TV or, you know, questioned someone or something, but you have 100 knowledgeable people voting on the budget.
Well, we can't assume that they're
Well,
not
yeah.
knowledgeable without sitting in the room, but I think that it's much more of a challenge, and
Yes.
obviously our budget's more complicated every year.
Thank you. Doreen?
Oh, please,
No, go
Lyndall.
ahead.
No,
I just want to ask again the process, because I know there are people in Brookline that want to go back to the meeting. Where would they come to make the petition? How would they do that?
You can call
No, you
the,
have to, I mean, we're gonna vote, I'm assuming we're gonna vote on the warning tonight, are we? 'Cause-
I don't have it, so we
Oh.
aren't gonna have a warning to actually vote on yet, but
So,
that's
going back
just
to
a
the-
matter of not having to.
you have to have a wording that's specific to it, and the secretary of,
I have-
State's office and the
Sta-
elections
she
division
can,
of the
she
Secretary of
gave
State's
me,
office
yeah,
has
the
a very
exact.
specific
But
form.
where do they bring it? I'm lost on
It
the
would
name.
come
Bring it
to
to
us,
this
and it would
board.
come to us when we were voting on our warning. I'm not sure what.
They could
is
bring
this
it to
board-
me, and we're probably not gonna have the warning ready to vote on until we usually we don't post it till,
We always vote on it at this meeting and any other
Well,
year, so.
yeah,
I don't know when we're
just
gonna
not
meet
ready
now.
to do it.
I can't bring it as a Brookline representative on the board. It's what you're saying, it's not appropriate for.
You're a resident. You can do
well,
whatever
you
want.
can
Any
drop
voter
it
can do it.
off, but what happens is you have to get a certain percentage
Of the town.
of all the voters for the budget. It's not necessarily of your town. I'm pretty sure it's a certain percentage of the number of voters that there are that vote on the budget. And you can leave off petitions all over the place, but when you combine all the numbers, and remember, I think you had an online part of that. And when you combine all the numbers, you have the correct percentage of people to bring it to the
In Brookline, it was
board.
4 when I went to get the percentage was needed. Now, that was for the election petitions
But
for the red.
this
That was
is for
something
the
different.
whole,
That's
Right.
different.
for
The whole district, yeah.
whoever's
But
voting.
I understand, this is very helpful, but where does, they
It gets
initiate
brought
this
to
thing?
the-
Where-
I mean, anybody can initiate it, it gets circulated throughout the 5 towns
Where
for
do we get-
signatures, and once they've achieved a certain number of signatures, I mean, nobody really knows until they collect them all together and bring them in, and together, they have a number that they know they need, then they would bring it to this board and present it for us to vote, to add to the warning that we will be voting on.
To this,
To the annual meeting warning.
annual,
We have,
right.
it would be
So we
added
still
as an
have time.
article. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised we don't have a warning tonight, because now we have to meet again to
It's on
find
the agenda.
If you can get it, it's.
On the agenda, email.
just put it in myself.
Um,
Patty's gonna help me.
Started one.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
because I know,
If
I would like to get
the
one.
board
get the.
decides to
Adjust the budget to meet the threshold. I have the numbers to plug into the warning.
So can you,
So this is not the warning.
No,
It's the preemptive warning that we need a warning.
that's just new legislative new statute language. There's a law that passed, that our article will need to say.
Annual meeting,
Right.
Article 1,
So-
6. This is from last year.
So, we actually have on here to discuss and approve a warning possibly, and I was hoping we'd get to that. But first, we have to decide whether we want to move forward, what it is as a budget we want to warn.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready.
I mean, I've stated, I think we should not exceed the threshold. I think that, that would be, territory I'm not willing to go to. And Emily agreed with me. Bruce, go ahead.
I would be very reluctant to exceed the threshold. I think there's a certain small number of people in Jamaica who actually want a zero increase in the budget. And some of those are very vocal people. Not very many, but it wouldn't take very many to.
I've heard the same thing, actually.
I have too. Those people exist across Leland and Gray, where, and the response to, well, there's a large portion of this that's outside of our control, and, it's dictated by IEPs and costs and all of that is, well, on the portion you do control, exercise it. So.
But, can I ask a question?
Sure.
But do we know if the board decides tonight to not exceed the threshold, do we know what the percentage increase will be?
Well, I can tell you what the percentage increase would be on the equalized pupil cost. That would be 1.18. If you give me a minute, I can get you that.
No rush, because he's still asking people how they feel, so.
Okay, I'll have that other number for you
No
in a minute.
problem.
Okay. Yeah, so any more, Dorinne?
Yeah, I'd like to know what you think, Dorinne. How difficult will it be to lose $42,000 out of the budget?
Difficult. I mean, there's a very, very tight budget.
I know.
The increases,
Obviously, we'll have to cut something. Do you have any idea what you would cut?
I couldn't venture to say right now.
I think we need to wait until we get a proposal. If we want to consider cutting $42,000 out.
So, just in response to that, when would you suggest I'm not real comfortable with the timeline, but when would we have to approve the budget? What's the drop dead date for us to approve a budget to get it going, Stephen? And then when would we be available to meet again? We would have to have another meeting
You have to
then.
warn it 30 to 40 days before
You have to
the
count
annual
30 to 40 days.
30 to 40 days back from-
Before that,
Beginning of January
for that
latest.
Tuesday.
It's usually during our vacation week.
Yeah, the 28th reminds me.
I think it's
December
usually
28th,
first-
we would
It's
have
usually
to-
the first
I'll
few
look it up
days.
for you.
It's usually between
Okay.
Christmas and
Go to
New Year's.
calendars.
I think,
Okay.
at some point. Or just after New
We have,
Year's,
So-
drop dead.
I don't want to mislead the board. I said it will be difficult, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done.
Right.
And I will do it, working with Bud and Stephen, and I heard what Emily said about, entrusting the administration to make those decisions.
Right, absolutely.
But at the same time, I am comfortable with the board warning the budget amount with the percentage increase that meets the requirements of the threshold based on what Bud shares with us and whatever that bottom line is. I don't want us to get behind in completing the documents for the annual report and the printing of the annual report, its distribution. I know this is a complicated year for probably every school board in Vermont, but I don't think that should hold us up. I think we can do this.
Okay.
Bob?
I was just gonna say, I don't think the Townsend voters are gonna, when they hear about the exceeding threshold, it's gonna be very hard to get them behind that.
Right,
I think it's just gonna be very hard. I think we need to
Right.
relook at the
Yeah.
budget.
Right, absolutely.
So you're suggesting that we approve it, $42,000 cut, and you will deal with it?
You should be principal, that was right on. I wish I could
Yeah.
have said it like that, yes.
Those are the days.
The
We don't
other,
have to meet at that time, but yet, that's when that's
Okay,
supposed
so it would have to be between December 23rd and January 2nd. We would have to meet, which is just not gonna happen.
You don't have to meet then, you just have to have the warning posted between those days and dated.
Oh, we'd have to meet
But we have to
before
meet to
that.
vote.
You have to meet the vote.
Yeah, if we don't do that, I think we should. Do you have the percentage, Bud, the bottom line for the budget? What is it?
That would be a 2.55% increase.
Okay, so the total budget increase, taking that money out, would be 2.55, and it would be a 1.18% increase in per pupil spending.
That's correct.
Could go with
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
So in this piece of
2.55,
paper
yes.
that we have before us, which does actually state the article that we'll have to put in the ballot, the number will be, what'd you say, 2?
Okay. The first number is the amount of the budget,
And how much is that?
7,120,218.
Could you repeat that?
7,120,218.
This is 1.1.
And the per pupil
Per pu-
spending at that point is?
16,611.
16,611.
Which is right on the nose. And that percentage increase is 1.18%.
Does that cut it close enough that there's another variable that could
That's not
shift
a
and
bad
throw us over? Do we need a cushion of, $20?
That's not a bad amount. That's not a scary.
Joe, I don't know what
I
to.
don't know is an acceptable
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, but this is the numbers we have now. I don't think per pupil numbers changed much at all last time between the first and the 15th. So I think we'll be okay.
Okay. All right.
I move that we,
That number would lie.
can I make a motion?
Sure.
I move that we approve this ballot language and the budget.
I second.
Any discussion? Wow. All right. Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the budget of $7,120,219. And we don't have to approve this language, right?
Can I just ask a question since you asked
Sure.
for, because the motion, it includes this language, this is fine, but that's not our warning. I just want to make sure
Right.
we understand that there's still
I
two.
got the warning and
There's
we'll-
still two more motions that need to be made for the warnings.
Right, and we don't have to approve this language, it's statute.
No, but I think it's
right?
fine because I think Howie's motion is appropriate because we
Okay.
did just go through that. That's fine. I just want to clarify.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded to approve. $7,120,218. Budget.
Thank you.
Budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe this is silly, but, is there any way that we could perhaps not cut staff or ask the community to pay this through taxes? Is there ways of fundraising to up our money? Like, is there a way that we can do like online fundraising or sell candy bars, or I don't know. Are there ideas like other than what we've always done? I don't know. Just thinking creatively, I guess.
We have done some work in that direction. We do have a consolidated federal grant that already offsets some of our costs. It actually goes to fund a number of our parts, like a piece of some teachers' full-time equivalent for the academic support services they provide, and also some of the, intervention response programs. And that's something that Steve and I have looked at quite a bit this fall, especially with the declining enrollment in so many of our schools, sharing staff between Leland and Gray and those schools. And luckily we have a meeting the day after tomorrow for a few hours about the annual report, and I can see us continuing that discussion. That's not a cure-all by any means, because it's a limited amount of money, but it's different from a bake sale.
Yeah.
But
I don't know, I was just thinking, there's like GoFundMe and Kickstarters and all sorts of things out there. It might, I don't know, shed light on potentially helping the board. That's all.
I think it's a great idea to think creatively, because it may result in staff reductions. It's not that we have any kind of, overfunded area of the budget that we say, oh yeah, that's gonna be a place where we can reduce off the bat. So I think if the board is fine with that, they've been watching me fundraise for years now, so.
Thanks. We need to talk about changes in the annual report, and that really just comes down to the way that the data is presented. We're not changing what's being given to people, but because of the accounting software, it's now gonna spit it out in the annual report, similar to what we got, rather than and I mean, we could apparently do the way that it's in there now, but there's cost associated with it, rather than just dumped straight out of, rather than just produced straight out of our accounting program. And there's also potential for inaccuracy, typos, transposing digits, and everything else. Right?
If I could speak to
Oh,
that.
please.
What gets produced out of our accounting software is very similar to what you already have. We could format it a little differently and play with the fonts, of course, but there are a couple of things that are different. If you look at our annual reports, we've always had health and dental together in one line. There are two separate lines in our actual budget, so that's always creates some confusion when we're working between our accounting software and the budget is adopted. It requires some additional work and effort there. The other thing, Joe, you mentioned there's a possibility of transposing numbers. I noticed that there was such an error in the current year's budget, where an item should have been 9,000 something and it came in at 19. Because whenever you're not working directly off the software, and there's a mechanical step in between to adjust those, there's a risk. So at a minimum, I'd like the board to say, yeah, make it look, if you want all that detail, make it look familiar, but use all the accounts that we have in our system, so it can just be brought over as an Excel spreadsheet, copied into PDF, and there's no manipulation of the numbers once they come out of the accounting software. The other question I would ask the board, and I can do it either way, the question is all that detail that you've traditionally given, which is essentially the line-by-line budget, is that is that necessary? And I don't know if you've ever thought of, what actually has to be produced.
Well, we provide way more information than law requires, but it's really a political decision and an informational issue. That's the-
Historical.
I'd like to know what our public thinks of that
Person that we
question.
have.
Is it
There's
too
more
detailed for
information.
you, or what?
There's more information here than what anybody's gonna look at, probably even in the annual report. How many people in Wyndham read the annual report? They go to vote, and if it looks like it's up, they may vote for it, they may not.
Howie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to see the figures spit out as close as possible to the format that your software, with the minimal amount of manipulation, because every manipulation introduces the possibility of error. And that includes simplifying it and combining line items. So if whatever format that your software has, I think that ought to be the format that we presented in, because that's gonna be the most, given the complexities of the budgets and last-minute changes and all the stuff that goes on, we need to be able to just spit out an up-to-date, accurate budget without having to do a lot of handwork on it. So that would be my counsel.
Different format might bring notice.
You had your hand up
Wait a
too?
minute, this is different.
So, but I don't know exactly what it's gonna look like when you go from one to the other. I totally agree with what Howie's saying. I think it's, we want to stay with the software that we have and we change the format. I think, as far as having us present less detail in the budget, I actually we've already gone a little bit in that direction anyway. We certainly have, since I've been on this board, changed it quite a lot, how much even the board looks at in detail. But I also think it's something that would be worthy of a other business conversation at an annual meeting where we put that out to people and say, is anybody really looking at all these items? To change it without any discussion publicly, I think is a big change for our communities. And so I would prefer that we continued to share the detail that we have in here now, as long as it's not, a huge burden on the central office or your business office.
It's a big step forward for me to be able to not combine line items from the accounting system into the annual report. There'll be a few more line items, but it'll be, as you and Howie have said, it'll come right out, and visually we'll do the best we can to make it look like what people are familiar seeing.
So change I'm not worried about, as long as there is some semblance of understanding between last year's, because a lot of people do just the same thing I do, and they keep their budget from the year before, and they look it over and they try to compare. And if it's going to be really different, I think this board and I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying that this board needs to be prepared to speak to their communities, and maybe even put a letter in here, or a one-page, right in the beginning, addressing that there are going to be changes, and here's how to navigate the changes, if we can do that in some way. I think however we can communicate with the public, if the changes are going to be quite different, I would be happy to give you feedback on, if you send it to the board or to one or two of us. Whatever is easier for you. I'm just trying to make it easier for our residents and our voters to understand.
Yeah, I certainly don't want the format of the document to become a bigger issue than what the information is itself.
Right.
So I'm sensitive to that.
But I think Howard's right.
Yeah.
That it's time to make that change.
Okay, then thank you. That will make things quite a bit easier and more accurate.
Okay, I got
Anyone else?
Got this ready for somebody to read.
All right.
When you're ready.
Stephen, do you have that financial report, or do you want to skip that? You're
Well,
looking at the
yeah,
warning?
I'll call your attention to it. You could go through it. We passed it out to some of you at the last meeting, all of you that were here at the last meeting. This is, okay, so I have a
Right.
copy here. This is what you are asked as questions as board members.
We need to.
These are front and back. We got this.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm not
Who needs
sure.
it? We do this, we've done this last year. Things haven't changed too much, so those of you that are experienced board members may not have any questions, but I'm obliged to report on behalf of each school district board that you have reviewed this document.
Could I answer any questions?
Do you need us to actually answer that and give it back to you, or you're answering it?
No,
and we just are knowing what you're doing.
Let me be clear here.
That's what I thought.
Let's wait till everybody's listening here a little bit. You ready?
I'm ready.
You only have one side, I'm sorry. That's because I tried to make copies, but you need two sides. But, then let me, just to be clear what's going on. Last year, we reviewed this, you looked at it, we asked questions, we got clarification about who was doing what. That's the process annually, because we always have board member changes, so I'm obliged now to report every January for each board that you have gone through this process of actually reflecting on this document. It's not that this is like a quiz for you to find out whether you're, know all the details or not, but if you have a question, now's the time, of course, anytime's okay to raise it, but now's the time to call it to our attention so that other board members benefit from your question. This comes from an actual law that was dug up. I think I've been in office for quite a long time, but it was not called to my attention by the agency until last year. So this is the first time it's been universally issued to all boards. Last year was the first year now. So I have the one, if you're curious, what the Board of Stratton responded collectively the other night when I met with them. I don't have it in my hand right now, but Marlboro's did theirs, submitted theirs last night. It just takes one piece of paper. I gotta, submit one for every board. That's all that's going on here. But it isn't, please, this is not a quiz or something. It's to provoke the discussion and understanding and remind board members of your fiscal responsibility. I gave one to Julian earlier when he was here, and it's a new experience for him to consider
This
all
is all
those things.
filled
'Cause
out,
he
right?
never.
Perfect.
He knew everything. All right, thank you.
Well,
Do we want to do
you
it
can handle
tonight?
it by having people, no, you don't have to do it tonight. I do need to have, I'm supposed to submit it in January, but I'm sure nobody's gonna go to jail over this thing, in January. But I just wanna call to your attention, I passed it out at the last meeting, and some people took it home. And,
So
if
can
you
we
have some
scan it and
questions,
send it to you?
well, that's
Are we
possible,
doing it
but you could just,
individually?
Couldn't we do it collectively?
We can just do it
do it
collectively at our
collectively, too.
January
It's
meeting.
just
I'll
the
put it on
way-
the agenda.
Okay, yeah.
Good thinking.
All right, so I'll put that on the January agenda. All right, moving on to new business. We have the policy committee met tonight. We have a policy that needs to be warned, right? Bruce, you want to take us through it real quick?
As soon as I find it. Yes, we looked at, we convened at 6 and looked at G11, which is responsible computer network and internet use. The committee voted to recommend to the board to warn the updated mandatory policy G11, which is titled Responsible Computer Network and Internet Use, dated 12/8/2015. So I'd like to make that a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that? We all had the policy emailed to us. Are the procedures a part of the policy? Or are they just attached for information purposes, G11P?
yeah, no, that's, the procedure is not something the board votes on. That is a requirement that we will have for all employees to sign. And that means everyone that we pay money to, basically. It's not, so
Okay,
it-
but that's not part of the
we're
policy,
aware.
that's just a procedure
No,
that we
and
have
that's
FYI.
because we may end up changing that. That has been put together with Matt Martin and Dorinne, and some
Gotcha.
input from me to try to be as complete as possible. Now, in the area of technology, things change. So we may want to change one of those numbers or revise it, depending on what happens. That's why administrative procedure is under the administration's responsibility to implement and enforce the policy that you set. But the policy is the standard VSBA policy, with the exception of on the second page at the top, there is something there added about all employees will, very top paragraph.
Sign the agreement form.
All Leland and Gray employees will sign the agreement form that lists the stipulations of this policy, G11.
Yeah, that's why we attached it, so you knew what, was going on in terms of what.
Gotcha,
what-
yeah.
what- But it's not policy.
Right, okay.
It's flexible in that it may have to respond, but the basic policy you have hopefully will last 5 years. That's the review cycle for policies. And I would commend the committee and the rest of the board for, if this gets warned tonight, we adopt it in January, that means you can take a break until after March organizational meeting, and we look at the new 5-year cycle for policies, because you're all up to date,
Yes.
Great.
as far as mandatory goes.
Well, it's been moved and seconded to warn the policy. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Nope. Beautiful. Motion. All right. The next item is to consider changing future board meetings to convene at 7. I know that we,
Motion, we do
I'll
that.
second.
all
Now we'll
right.
discuss it.
It's been moved and seconded to change future board meetings to start at 7 o'clock. Any discussion on that?
I'll just say thank you. Because
It was a good
6:30,
try.
if I'm driving up to Montpelier,
Yeah.
either Monday night or Tuesday morning, and coming back down Tuesday night for board meeting, I can't make it by 6:30. It's just not enough hours in the day.
All right. Any other discussion?
Well, I mean, I personally would have to leave half an hour earlier for the meetings, but that would be better for the majority of the board.
Because you think they'll go that longer,
Well,
you mean?
it's Tuesday, so I have school the next day, so.
Right, so, but what my hope is that the meetings will end the same time, just start.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't seem to be getting any shorter. We just fill the more time.
We just tried to
My
work
hope
on
is that
that.
we'll,
Yeah, we're working.
we'll consolidate,
All right.
I got a check for you.
but
All right,
point
so,
taken.
uh,
I
Right.
think that's a really important.
Yeah.
that is, yes.
Yeah, because we need
Well
to
said.
end in time for these guys to go home and do it.
All
I'm
right.
glad you said that.
Well, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it's unanimous. All right, so our January meeting now will be January 5th at 7 PM. All right, Stephen, you've come up, you're handing out
Can't be good,
a
at least
warning.
you can be fast.
I'm very impressed.
15 eyes, pairs of eyes will get this right. If you all look at it carefully, we'll get all the
Alright.
typos correct. There's always something that I miss.
Good, that's all I know, yeah.
Thursday at 7:30, 2:16 is the meeting.
So we're sure February 2nd is a Tuesday.
You can check your calendars.
I don't have
I do.
It might be in the wrong year, you never know.
We might all be. It is.
Well, it does happen that this
It
phone
has
does get to be the
before.
wrong year sometimes.
February 2nd is a Tuesday.
Oh, really?
Got the right year, right? 16, that's.
It's Groundhog Day. So says my calendar.
I don't have a 216 calendar.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sure.
So is it fair to say that this 1.18% increase is mostly due to health care costs? When people ask me, why did the budget go up?
Healthcare and special ed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's, I do think that we'll want to prepare a rationale. We were at,
Yeah.
what meeting were we at? We were talking about the talking points, you know.
Last week, Jeremy
Right.
came up with a great talking point. It was
Right.
like concise.
What
I
happened
would
was,
assume
never
that
signed
Dorinne's gonna
me, I
have a new
guess.
rationale when.
Oh, we'll have to edit
Through the
things, yeah.
changes.
Yeah, we'll have to
Clearly
change
she's gonna-
things, yeah. Okay, keep going carefully through all the, lines there. Let me know if there's something I need to correct.
Looks great, Stephen.
It's amazing,
I
isn't
think
it?
you've done a great job so far.
Fast and good.
Well, the Article 6 is the one that has the changes, right? But don't ignore the other ones. I think I have all the dates right and everything. And I don't believe we've indicated what the salaries are gonna be. That's one thing we could state clearly.
That always a motion from the floor?
Yeah, that's how we've done it in the past.
Yeah.
Usually it stays the same, but
Is it the 2015 or is it
that gives people incentive to show up at the meeting.
Is it
2015
or the 2016?
Yeah, it's dated Townsend, December 28th, 2000, this December.
This is correct.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
confusing.
But
Thanks
it's
for
true.
asking, but I think I got it right. The 28th is I think it's a Tuesday. huh?
Stephen sets that a bit based on when he thinks his staff can get around to
See,
post
we have
the
to go
warnings.
hang it at all the postable spots, because the clerks are usually not working during that time, and it does happen traditionally that the 30 to 40 days happens, it's actually January 2nd back to December 23rd, that's the 30 to 40 day window, and the 2nd is a Sunday. Yeah,
Shouldn't the line on, Article 6 be
Yeah.
2016 to 2017 instead of 2015 to
yes,
2016?
that's very good, thank you so much.
We knew there was one.
I am very happy that I still made an error, I wouldn't have wanted to,
Be
finish
perfect.
finish out my tenure with perfection.
I kind of heard and looked over here, so, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You knew they had
That's
to.
exactly why.
Very good.
That's why I made 15 copies. I was just, this is the first time I've actually been able to get the library printer to print for me. That's progress, technology.
I think you've nailed it here, though, other than that. As long as
Now,
this language is
Gloria's our clerk, right?
Yep.
That didn't change. And Joe's our chair.
No questions that came up at the annual meeting that needed to be on our warning?
Now,
material?
see, this is where, when you ask the question about petition, that's where this would have to appear. You'd have to have an article in here saying that, not for this meeting, but for the next, for the people who come together to vote, and it'd have to be on Australian ballot. So that would be an Article, 7, with the transaction being number 8.
And
It
I
would have to be a
get
new article
certain-
that I put in there, and it is language. I was looking at my online law stuff, or my folder on warnings, and I don't see it in there. What I have is I have a whole bunch of warnings for when we had to do this 3 times in the previous years.
Just for clarity, if we could put it on
Yes.
in our
You
own
could-
language
You could
without
so
a
vote
petition,
tonight.
obviously. But if, the petition comes to us, it has to be put into the warning specifically the way the petition is, that's why the language of the petition is so important, because it has to be the legal language that goes in here for the warrant,
Well,
for
why
the
can't we
article.
do it tonight?
As a board, you could so vote.
You'd rather not.
Well, I'm just saying, in the past, we've always decided we didn't want it to come from the board because it never originally came from the board. We wanted it to come from the community.
Wow.
So-
As I recall, last year, our moderator said that that was going to be his last year. Well, it's not really a board
But he was
problem per se.
elected?
Do we,
Correct?
Well, you-
Right, Ralph was elected, and
So if
then,
anybody knows of a moderator,
Oh,
if Ralph doesn't want to do it,
yeah.
you should.
The article
We
is
need to
wrong, it's
follow
just
up
that
on
you
that
need
to make sure
you
we
need to
actually
make sure you
have
have somebody running for moderator, yeah.
I'll see him next week, so I'll ask him.
I think he's replacing himself, isn't he? He's gonna talk to somebody?
Who
I
knows,
haven't
Ralph?
talked to him. I know him, and I'll
I
see him
think he
next
said
week. So
something
I'll
to
see him
that
this
effect
weekend.
last year, but
He's running to Jamaica.
Oh, that's right.
We'll see,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
see him next week.
We'll see him Tuesday night.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Bruce, you'll see him Tuesday night.
But if anybody knows anybody who likes to be moderator, let him know. If Ralph is still following
The
up.
whole district, yes.
Okay.
Jim Friedman.
Well, I'm sure we can get the Townsend moderator to do it too.
Okay,
All right, that'd be good.
I will reprint.
And he's a pistol too. All right, any more typos? I don't see any. You're almost
I'm
perfect,
gonna
Steve.
reprint so you can get the signature kind of done there. I almost made it, huh? Good catch. Somebody deserves an extra $10 on their stipend.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll print again here.
Just for the signatures, we don't all need it, correct?
Okay. I'll just make one for the signatures,
Yeah.
signature page. I'll send
All
it to you email.
hand-corrected
Now,
yours.
I'm concerned on the very last line, dated at Townsend, Vermont, 28th day of December in the year 2006, should be 16?
No,
No.
that's this
No.
year.
It has to be 30 or 40
It's
days
dated
before.
this year.
February
All right,
2nd.
all right, all right.
You okay?
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
Just change to 16, 17. That was important.
yep.
Yeah, but we're still signing it when it really is, not when we're talking about voting budgets.
Looking back at these dates, and I said, why is it?
As long as these numbers are correct.
They are.
They're underlined in here. I didn't know whether underlined or not. I think it does make it
No,
stand out. I think
no,
it's
they're
good.
underlined because
Yeah.
it's legislative
But I-
underlining. It's new
All right.
language, it's all it means.
Yeah, I understand that, but I thought
No, we
it
don't
was
need
good to have them stand out. Do you want it underlined or not?
Nope.
Okay,
No.
we'll do it again.
So we just need
Well,
a
I mean,
motion
no,
to
I don't
approve
think
the
it
warning,
matters.
right?
It doesn't
So
matter.
moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and approved, or, I'm sorry, moved and seconded to approve the warning for the 2016 annual meeting as presented, I guess.
You want to mention, as previously voted, right? This is the article, or this is
No,
the warning.
We're voting on this warning.
Warning.
Right. Do we need to
Saying the
read the
amount
whole
of-
warrant?
No,
Do we
no.
need to
No.
read the whole warrant?
Nope,
No?
You can refer to the previous, yeah.
Okay.
we're gonna attach this to our
Yeah,
minutes,
we'll
I hope.
attach it to the minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to send
Um,
it to everybody.
All right. All in favor of approving the warning?
Aye.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is
Sorry.
Lyndall, I think, was concerned because if she were to get a petition,
Too late this year.
it would be too late.
Yep.
Right.
Okay,
Would have
for
to be
this year,
tonight.
but you could start working on it for next year, and then we're
Right.
way ahead of the game. And I would help you with it.
Thanks for
All right.
Here, you'll have a copy.
So all in favor was
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? Any abstain, man,
Abstentions.
any abstentions? Thank you. Couldn't get it out. All right, motion carries. Hmm?
Did you get the Australian ballot?
We have to vote on the Australian ballot warning too, right?
Yeah, you just have to vote on it in this language. I
But it has to
don't
be
have
signed in the same way,
Yeah.
so you'll.
I got it. I'll try to find it.
Okay.
So what Article 1 will be is everything after
Figure out another time.
where it says the following ballot question. See here on the warning, it's this. This will be Article 1, shall the voters,
Right, so the Australian ballot will be the legal voters of Leland and Gray,
With the
that whole language.
changes
And
of
Article 1 will
language.
be what is
It'll say
Article.
February 3rd.
It'll be the quote marks here, shall the voters of Leland and Gray expend, right?
yes.
Okay,
It's the same, Article 1 of our Australian ballot warning will be the same language as Article 6, except for the public information hearing piece. Okay?
Right.
right.
So if everybody's got their annual report or their last year's warning, you'll know what I mean.
Anybody want to see it here? This is what they're referring to, if you want to.
I mean, I have an annual report if you wanna see what it's gonna look like.
Trust you.
The only question, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
There's more to the Australian ballot warning, and it talks about where the vote's taking place. And we always ask every year if anyone in any town knows of any changes in your poll locations or times when your polls are open. Right now, it says Wyndham, let's see, who's first? Let's see. Brookline, town offices, Jamaica, town offices, Newburgh Firehouse for Newfane, Town Hall for Townsend, and town offices in Wyndham. Are those all correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and then the times are 9, starting, they all close at 7, all the polls close at
That's
7,
legally,
but
that's-
starts 9
right.
in Brookline, 10 in Jamaica, 9 in Newfane, 9 in Townsend, and 10 in Wyndham. That's correct for Newfane.
Absentee ballots available.
They are available 30 days prior.
I don't know, but that sounds right to me. They actually are available
provide
sometimes
them.
earlier. We provide them. I have to print them out first for
30
all
days
the
prior
towns.
to the votes.
Yeah.
I think they have to be at least available that earlier, but that
think
early,
that
because
was-
they're also trying to do something for the troops overseas and all
You
that.
gonna be gone? So
I'm
We'll
gonna
make
have
sure.
to mail it.
we'll make sure we get them when you have to have it.
Well,
You go to your clerk and request it,
I'll,
they'll give
I'll
it to
figure
you.
it out with Lori.
But she gets it from us, so she'll just send it back to us, so plug in the fire.
His new thing goes down by one vote.
What I do is print all the ballots for the number of ballots that each town clerk requests.
Right,
Do we need a motion to approve that, or just?
we sure do.
We need a
Yes.
motion to approve the Australian ballot warning as well?
As the way I stated, I'll make
Yeah,
that
As
motion.
Em.
I just sort of stated it if everybody's comfortable with what I said.
I'd like to vote against it, but I won't.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the Australian ballot warning as stated by Emily. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Beautiful. All right, now we can go to the consent agenda, right? Need a motion to approve the consent
Move to
agenda.
approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Bills and pay orders. You guys reviewed these, I saw you. We have two.
No, that's,
Oh, 10, 13, 15?
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
Who moved and seconded to approve the Australian ballot?
I moved it.
Emily moved it,
seconded it.
Patty
Patty
seconded it.
Thank you.
We're not
From
approving
last
that,
week's-
are we? That's from October.
Oh, why is it still in the box?
I don't know.
In the front.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 general fund warrants in the amount of $672,040.27 and 4 payrolls in the amount of $240,106.39 for a total of $912,146.66. They've all been reviewed and checked, so I just need a motion to approve those.
Make a motion. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the warrants and payrolls. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. We do have a brief executive session, I guess.
Can I ask, I have something,
Sure.
maybe other, I don't know if it.
Yeah.
I meant to ask if I could add it to the agenda or something, I think I was talking. I have a question, it's about Act 46 and all the discussion and the Jamaica thing and everything, and, people have come to me and there's anxiety building and there's a lot of stuff going on and with all the information getting out. And when I started having people talking to me and stuff, I realized that there's probably a lot of anxiety at the schools with the faculty and the staff. At Jamaica School, I'm sure there's anxiety, and here, I'm sure there's anxiety. And I just was wondering what type of communication is being made, like either by Stephen or Dorinne with the faculty to keep them calm, that everybody's doing the best they can to make sure that Leland and Grace survives and goes on and shines, and because I think left to their own devices, they will go to the negative. And we could start losing some of our younger faculty because they'll think they need to look for another job, and I think that would be a shame. So I think regular communication with them about what's going on with Act 46 and what discussions are, and making sure they're all aware of what efforts are being made would be an important thing.
Well, I actually am just going to try to write an email to the association co-presidents regarding the decision by the board tonight, so that they're advised that the administration is, the budget's been voted, that the administration has to make some adjustments in the budget. That isn't exactly reassuring words, but you know, that's what we have to share with the public and certainly with our employees. So I think you're giving very good advice. People need to stay calm about this and look at the long term. Now, it would help if boards projected out to 2020. You have a vision piece about 2020. What does that really mean in terms of your projected student enrollment, and what numbers of staff can we support and sustain? I mean, that's kind of threatening, but that's really the reality that Howie spoke to as well. I mean, it's, you know, people have to know what they're planning for. Now, we have a lot of retirements coming up. You know, it's not impossible.
I'm talking about to the faculty and the staff of
Right.
the schools. I'm not talking about the public. I've got my speak for the
Okay.
public. I'm talking about the people who will be super impacted.
So it's a conversation in my mind that's happening right now in this timeline because Act 46 passed. But personally, this is a conversation I think that is ongoing and needs to happen regardless of our Act 46. It
Well, that's
needs to
true.
happen.
Yeah, very good.
Because of our declining enrollment. We looked at the projections tonight, and it's not just us, I'm not talking about just Leland and Gray, I'm really specifically talking about schools that are facing declining enrollment. I think it's an important point that Patty brings up. I don't know as it's necessarily specific to Act 46, I think that it's connected to that because we're all being forced to have this conversation right up front, which I think is actually more reassuring, honestly, than less, in my mind. But I think that it's an ongoing issue that we have.
Do-
And I think that's a good point.
Dorinne, do you sense that the faculty is anxious or concerned about, especially when there's talk about Jamaica leaving and how that will impact Leland and Gray's future?
There are a lot of questions, and not a lot of answers
Yeah.
now. But it's certainly on their minds.
Yeah.
I was
I
just
can
gonna-
assure you the WC office staff is aware of the possibilities of the future.
There's an article that came out in the paper, which I thought was very misleading, which made it sound like Jamaica can just leave Leland and Gray.
Well, that's somebody's intention.
Well, whatever, but there's a law that we obviously have to work around, and there's a very specific law. This is not a new law. This is a long-time law of union school districts, and for Jamaica to leave, there needs to be a vote, a positive vote of the electorate of all 5, including Jamaica, but all 5 member towns.
At this point. But
You know,
there's a discussion that, and it was even said at Jamaica's last meeting I went to,
we would
that
have to statutorily change that union school district law.
somebody's wanting to do
Well,
that.
that would take it act of the legislature, so.
Yeah. Well, that's, somebody's wanting to do that, and
Well,
they've said it,
It was brought up at the Wyndham board meeting.
yeah. And it was brought up at the Jamaica board meeting, and it was, they said that Oliver wanted to do that.
I've never heard him ever mention that, and it never has come to us. in the
He
House
told
Ed
me
Committee.
on the phone, actually, that he's thinking of trying to do that.
He's
I'm pretty
thinking.
sure
Well,
that-
yeah, there's a lot of, our wall is full of proposals.
Yeah.
I would think that would be
But
very
I'm just-
disappointing to do that at this time, so I doubt very much.
So
there's gonna be
it's
support for
things
that.
like that that would be good to communicate, like, to the staff, because I'm sure if we're hearing it, they're hearing it. I just have concerns about communication, solid communication, because I know how things go at Stratton when we don't have snow.
Right, I think that's
People
an
start
important point.
freaking out and saying, oh, am I gonna have my job in January if we still don't have snow? And,
But-
without solid communication.
But maybe if I could follow, because I think you're bringing up a really valid point, maybe we could get sort of some feedback from the administration on how we're dealing with that. I mean, we can't really, how do we reassure when we know our enrollment is going down? So how do we address that? So maybe at some point, we need to be talking about this in the future, about what does Leland and Gray look like?
Well, that's what.
Or Wyndham Central or anything else.
That's what I'm
because-
suggesting is the next part of that vision statement, is what does
Yeah.
it really mean in terms of practical numbers and what we're going to do and to secure the learning opportunities for our students in a way that's sustainable. And those are difficult conversations to have, but
Yeah,
we
I don't know
certainly
how to
should be
reassure
engaging
staff.
in them. One thing that, it might be a rationale for the entire Leland and Gray unit to become a pre-K through 12, single board, single budget, single entity. that certainly would promise more sustainability for the program pre-K through 12. But it compromises the individual nature of all your towns. You know, they have to be willing to get together, and that's what's been challenging about.
So if they're not willing to do that, I highly doubt that Jamaica will be willing to have school choice and give money to parents to send their kids to somewhere else. If that's gonna be such a struggle. That's gonna be, and that's what I've told people, but I think, again, I'm telling my people who come to me and ask me, you know, I say, well, you know, I think it's gonna be a stretch even to get them to agree to one board, much letting go of their Jamaica board, much less giving the money to basically to the parents to pick which school they want to send their tax money to, you know. But I just want to make sure that our faculties and staffs are, you know, reassured, are feeling comfortable about, you know, the next step, what's happening, and that Leland and Gray, we're fighting hard to have Leland and Gray be here after 2017, 2018.
I have, if I could just say, I have spoken with several faculty members about working in the elementary schools, and that has been well received. It's regarded very positively to start programs earlier. I've had conversations with the principals, and it's a work in progress, but actually our budget in part reflects those conversations for at least one of the positions.
Okay.
And I think that we probably, as a board, need to be, because I don't want to be laying out any reassurances that are not true either. So I think we as a board need to start really thinking about how we're going to address retirements or early retirements and start planning for what the future looks like, so that we don't have that fear of the
Yeah.
younger teachers leaving, because that's
Right.
not what we, it's very thoughtful, and it's a smart thing to do, to start planning ahead for lower enrollment. We should be doing that.
I just want to say that Oliver sits on the board of Burton. And if he brings a proposal to the legislature to modify the rules of being in a student union, I think it would be highly unethical of him. And I would hope, Emily, that you up there in Montpelier would point out that he is basically advocating for Burton over Leland and Gray by doing this. I mean, it seems, it doesn't smell right to me. But
Benefits.
yeah, who's benefiting from this? And I also know that there's a push up in Montpelier for stronger scrutiny of private schools. When you have a school like Burton that is almost completely funded by Vermont state dollars, but doesn't have 1/10 of the oversight that a public school does, and has incredible advantages of fundraising. There's an incredible discrepancy between the opportunities that a public school student here or in Brattleboro is getting and a student at Burton. And I hope that the legislature is addressing that. I know they actually are. There's a bill that's coming up for more oversight of private schools that are predominantly funded by public money.
That's something that the State Board of Education is looking into, to review the oversight and the, what do you call it, the regulations around them, to approve independent schools.
Okay.
All right, thanks. So our last thing is executive session. Are we gonna have any, it's just a point of information, we're not gonna have any action after,
No.
so we can let
There'll
Peter
be no
and
action
Rich go?
necessary. Yes.
Okay. What? You and your,
Here.
Oh, that's right.
Thank you for being here.
thank you. Hey, we didn't do too bad. 8:40?
No?
You can't get home till I go, but-
My goal is, oh, is that right? My goal is still 8:30.
Yeah, well, we'll keep getting better.